After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up. But it was the leader of the NDP who was out trick-or-treating a bit early. He was tricking Canadians into thinking he was going to end his Liberal coalition, and his treat was his pension. As a result of that, more and more Canadians are facing the carbon tax, and we have 9 million Canadians who are facing food insecurity. Will the NDP Liberal government end its tricks and call a carbon tax election so it's Canadians who have the treat?
Hear, hear. I'm hearing some other voices aside from the one who has the floor. I would just ask members to please hold off until it's time for their question or comment. The honourable member, l'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
You know, it's pretty rich for the Conservatives to be talking about pensions as they're actively committed to cancelling Canadians' pensions and their pensions, and the leader of the Conservatives' pensions worth more than $2 million. But as always, Madam Speaker, the three-word slogans coming from the Conservatives don't make sense. They're not even true. Inflation is down. Interest rates are down. Gas prices are way down. And according to the Canadian Climate Institute, thanks to our environmental policies, emissions are down too. Despite this good news, Madam Speaker, the Conservatives don't want to cheer for the Canadian economy or Canadians. They want bad news to tread on.
Again, I'm hearing lots of voices, and I have my speaker on, and I'm having a hard time hearing the answer. So I would ask members to please listen carefully before they speak. The honourable member for Foothills.
Here's the real news, Madam Speaker. The number of Canadians facing food insecurity is up 111%. That is 25% of Canadian families who can't afford to put food on the table. Let that sink in. How is that even possible? But that is the stark reality Canadians are facing as a result of the Liberal NDP costly carbon tax, driving up costs on farmers, on truckers, and on food production. The Liberal NDP government has already said they don't work for the people. They work for the Prime Minister. Will this NDP Liberal government put Canadians first and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, time and time again in this House, the Conservatives cite food bank lineups and food insecurity to try to signal that they care about Canadians, while they every day stand up in this House and cheer on bad news and really root for the failure of our economy in Canada. Inflation is down to the Bank of Canada's target rate of 2%. That is good news for all Canadians. That affects food prices in this country. Our government has put forward a grocery rebate, GST rebate, immediate support, and a national school food program. The Conservatives voted against.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. After 9 years, well, it's been a tough first week of session for this Prime Minister. A second defeat in a Liberal stronghold. And he's lost his Quebec lieutenant and a member of his caucus. That's right after the poor performance in the by-election. The only good news is that now he has a coalition with the leader of the Bloc Québécois in order to save his bad minority government. How can this Liberal government still ask for the confidence of parliamentarians or Canadians? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, it's a great idea to ask this question on September 20th, the day when the childcare benefit is being paid. In my colleague's writing, families are receiving $650, and that's with no tax. There are thousands of families in my colleague's writing. But as usual, the Conservatives want to cut everything, including, according to his leader, the childcare benefit. Does my colleague agree with that? The honourable member. Madam Speaker, this Liberal bloc is the most centralizing and divisive government ever. It has increased the cost of living, doubled the cost of housing. Even the Quebec Premier is asking the Bloc Québécois to represent Quebec and not vote to perpetuate this government. Will Quebec ministers and members recognize that if the Bloc is not doing its job to represent Quebec, they should try to support Quebec by voting against this Prime Minister or following the lead of member for Honoré Mercier become independents? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's horrifying, the level of cynicism it takes to decide to attach your political future to the failure of the Canadian economy, like the leader of the Conservative Party did. The leader of the Conservatives said that inflation would never end if we kept on with our policies and refused his policies, but now inflation is back to 2%, the appropriate level. Does he really believe in the silly things he says? Is everything just politics for the Conservatives? The honourable member. Madam Speaker, it's very clear that a bad Liberal government for Quebec is bad for Quebecers. The Liberal bloc can try to justify what it's doing, but other than stroking its leader's ego, there's no reason to support this Liberal minority government. When will the Prime Minister of the Liberal bloc let Quebecers vote for a common-sense government which will work hard for the interests of all Quebecers, which will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My colleague talked about stroking the ego of the Conservative leader. Well, recently, the Conservative leader said that helping children go to school with a good breakfast was bureaucratic. He said that it was red tape to help children who don't have food to get a good breakfast before they go to school to learn. And you talk about feeding the ego of the Conservative leader instead of feeding children in his riding.